Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something that's just viscerally terrifying, but also incredibly fascinating. It affects millions of people all over the world. We're talking about the waking nightmare that is sleep paralysis. It's a subject that sparked centuries of legends and myths, but today, we're going to rely strictly on the science. Let's get right into it. So I want you to think about this for a second. Have you ever woken up in the dead of night, completely aware of your bedroom, but found that you absolutely couldn't move a single muscle? If you're nodding your head right now, I really want to validate that intense fear for you. You are definitely not alone. And yes, it is exactly as scary as it sounds. And hey, if you haven't experienced this yourself, well, prepare to be totally fascinated by what the human brain is capable of conjuring up. Just imagine this scenario for me. You're awake. You're completely aware of your surroundings. You can feel the temperature of the room. You see the dim light coming through the window. But you're trapped, literally trapped inside your own body. Many people who go through this report this terrifying sensation of a heavy, suffocating weight pressing down directly on their chest. It makes it incredibly difficult to breathe. They try to speak, they try to scream for help, or even just wiggle a toe, but they just can't.
Section 1. The Waking Nightmare. Let's dive into what sleep paralysis actually is.
Okay, so to understand what's actually happening to you in the dark, let's pull back from how incredibly spooky this feels and just ground ourselves in the clinical definition. Sleep paralysis is quite simply a temporary inability to move or speak while you're completely conscious. Usually this lasts anywhere from just a few fleeting seconds to maybe a couple of agonizing minutes. Now, in the moment, I know it feels like an absolute eternity, but it is a concrete, strictly biological reality. And what's interesting is that this terrifying paralysis usually strikes at two very specific transition points in your sleep cycle. You can experience it during what's called the hypnagogic state, which is just a fancy way of saying the transitional period right as you're falling asleep. Or it can happen during the hypnopompic state, which is precisely when you're waking up. So basically, you're caught right on the threshold, completely stuck between the sleeping world and the waking world. Section 2. The science of paralysis. Let's look at the body's defense mechanism.
All right, let's pivot away from the paranormal fear for a second and look straight at the fascinating neurological biology of our sleep stages. Because believe it or not, there's a purely mechanical reason your body is doing this. To understand the glitch, we really need to understand the normal, healthy process first. During REM sleep, which, as you probably know, is the stage where our most vivid dreaming happens, the body naturally enters a state called muscle atonia. Your brain essentially locks your physical body down into a state of temporary paralysis. Why? Well, for your own safety. It completely prevents you from physically jumping out of bed and, running away from your dream monsters or accidentally sleepwalking into your kitchen.
Let's move along and see exactly how this glitch builds up chronologically. It's really a four-step process. Step 1. Your body enters REM sleep. Step 2. That protective muscle atonia begins, locking everything down and keeping you still. But here is where the massive misfire occurs. Step 3. Your brain suddenly wakes up and regains consciousness. However, and this is step 4, your body remains completely paralyzed. So your physical body is still locked down in REM sleep, but your conscious awareness, it's completely returned. Section 3. Hallucinations and the presence.
Now that physical paralysis is really only half the nightmare. Because your brain is still partially stuck in that highly active, dreamlike REM state, it actually doesn't have its normal sensory filtering engaged. And because of this lack of filtering, you can experience incredibly vivid hallucinations. We're talking visual hallucinations like seeing dark shadow figures lurking in the corner of your bedroom. They can be auditory too, hearing footsteps, heavy breathing, or even sinister whispers right by your ear. Or they can be tactile. This completely explains that terrifying feeling of physical pressure on your chest or the sensation of someone actually grabbing you. Without that sensory filtering in place, these hallucinations feel 100% real. So the crucial point here is what happens next in your brain's architecture. Meet your amygdala. This is your brain's primary threat detection system. Because you're paralyzed and suddenly awake, a massive, overwhelming fear response is triggered. Your panicked brain hyperactivates that amygdala, desperately trying to make sense of this extreme fear and complete physical helplessness. And to rationalize why you are so terrified, your brain literally invents a sinister presence in the room with you. It's wild.
Section 4. Cultural myths and reality.
And this brilliantly illustrates something fascinating about human history. Given how intense that emotional impact is, vivid hallucinations paired with total physical helplessness, humanity has historically tried to explain this phenomenon by pointing to ghosts, demons, or even supernatural attacks.
For centuries, cultures all over the globe have given these shadow figures various terrifying names, and honestly, those deeply ingrained beliefs actually influence how the experience feels in the moment. But when we objectively compare those cultural myths directly to biological reality, the truth becomes incredibly clear. We now know for a fact it's a neurological glitch, a dream state overlap, and pure amygdala activation. It is purely a psychological and neurological process. It is absolutely not a paranormal attack.
Section 5. Triggers and Prevention. Let's talk about taking control.
I really want to empower you here with some actionable, science-backed steps so you can actually take control of your sleep. If we look at the most common triggers, you're going to notice a theme pretty quickly. We're looking at irregular sleep schedules, sleep deprivation, stress, anxiety, sleeping on your back, and of course, overthinking right before bed. Think about it. Our modern habits, especially high stress and a constant lack of sleep, are often the exact things setting off this intense fear response. We're essentially priming our brains for this mismatch by just totally exhausting ourselves and carrying all of our daily anxieties right into bed with us.
So, what's the prevention? Well, it's directly tied to reversing those exact triggers. You really want to maintain a regular sleep schedule, actively work to reduce your stress before trying to sleep, and generally improve your overall sleep hygiene. Also, fun fact, for some people, simply avoiding sleeping on your back makes a huge difference. And hey, if it does happen to you, just try to remind yourself to stay calm during the episode. Why does all this matter? Because simply understanding the science that we've covered today significantly reduces the anxiety, the confusion, and ultimately the frequency of these waking nightmares. Now, what's really interesting about summarizing this simply as a natural brain-body mismatch is how it completely strips away the terrifying power of the experience. It's not a demon, it's not a ghost, it's literally just your biology getting a little confused between the dreaming world and your waking consciousness. That's the whole shebang. Which leaves us with this final thought. Now that you know those shadow figures are just a fascinating trick of an overworked amygdala and a sleep-deprived brain, what will you change about your sleep habits tonight? Take control, get some good rest, and remember, the only monsters in the dark are the ones your own fascinating brain creates. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Sleep tight.